Hi, Ann.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was muted.
So are congratulations in order yet, or we still have another step to go?
Congratulations are in order, and we have another step to go.
Good.
Like
Good.
yes, one hurdle, a big hurdle, but we'll see how it all unfolds with.
I have confidence in you.
Oh, it's not me. You need to have confidence in.
Well, I don't have much confidence in Washington. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll see if it all happens. Okay, so by my count, it looks like we can start. So let's see. Maybe we could. I think Bet today was going to call roll. Is I saw her name earlier. Can you go ahead and call the roll?
Yeah, I just a reminder this meeting is being recorded. And with that, we'll get started. Professor Ann Tron.
Yes, here.
Dave Mendiola. Laura Fitzsimmons.
Here.
Joni Eastley. Chris June Kiliani. Jeff Wells.
Here.
Drew Christensen.
Here.
I'm sorry, if my name was called, whoever is speaking is really, really muffled. So this is Joni Eastley, not sure if you called my name or not.
I did, I'll mark you as here. Rob Tells.
You're muted,
Oh,
Ron.
present, here.
Kate Thomas. Bevan Lister. Commissioner Hall. Allison Jaffe.
Yes, I'm present.
And Justice William Moppin. And that is the end of the roll.
All right, and I'm not sure if I counted right, but I think we do have a quorum and we're good to continue even though we have a few absences, and we're hopeful that Kate Thomas will join us later in the meeting. So with that, Bet, I just wanted to ask if there were any public comments that we received before the meeting, like by email?
No.
No, okay, and then just want to open it up in case anyone is here to make a public comment, which you're welcome to do, and we limit it to 3 minutes. Any one of our guests who's watching, feel free, but I'm not seeing any activity, so I'm going to move on. Okay. So our first action item is number 3, which is the approval of the minutes from November 17th, our last 2021, our last meeting.
I'll move adoption.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
Yes, this is Joni Eastley. I thought they looked great. I'll second that.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, me too. Okay, so just looking down the agenda, we mostly have a lot of updates on the work of the department, which is great. So I don't think it will be a very long meeting, and we can just hear those updates and then wrap up as we sort of look forward. So Marcy, maybe I can hand it off to you to start with the fiscal status reports.
Yes, and for the record, it looks like Dave Mendiola just appeared.
Oh yeah, great.
Just so that we know that. So we've attached in the attachments updates for the quarterly fiscal reports that we've received. These reports were due January 15th. And you can see that there are several that we are still missing. We are missing Esmeralda for the Davis counties. We are missing Lander, but they have not reported first quarter. And we are still missing Lincoln County's reporting. As for the non-Davis counties, we have not received Story County. So we've provided all of the updates as to how close we are to their maximum contribution. But in reading the maximum contribution formula, there is a caveat for case-related expenses for experts and investigators in counties where there's a population of less than 100,000. So in the quarterly reporting that we've provided to you, if counties have reported that in that second quarter that they spent money on investigators or experts, we are preparing a work program to request reimbursement from the state for the counties for those expenses. In order for counties to qualify for this to be considered, or that it may be considered a state expense, is they had to set up a request for those expenses separate from the judiciary. This board did end up changing the law with Assembly Bill 480. So there is that separation from the judiciary where they request those funds from our department or our designee. But in matching or in following the maximum contribution formula as it is still written, for those counties that are Davis counties, we are asking for a total of $26,360. That's for Douglas County in the amount of $5,055, Lyon County in the amount of $19,588.97, and White Pine County in the amount of $1,716. And as for the non-Davis counties, we are asking for $8,960. That's for Carson City in the amount of $2,373, and Humboldt County in the amount of $6,587. So we will be preparing those work programs and sending those to our financial analyst, asking for the opportunity to request for that reimbursement.
Just a quick follow-up on that. What do you think the timeline, do you have any idea what the timeline for the process is to get the money back, to go through get to the end?
I don't know how far it will be because we haven't been able to talk to our analyst. I would believe it would probably be April IFC. But I'd have to get better dates when I submit these and talk with our or our financial analyst. But I'll keep everyone posted when they're going in front of the board for IFC, if they go.
And then just one other question is, you mentioned you didn't have information from certain counties reporting. So is there a common thread, or just is it worthwhile commenting on that, or is it?
We have reached out to every county to remind them of the process for the reporting. We also, again, reached out to those counties once they had missed the deadline to remind them to submit those reports. We are open to receiving these reports later. We just have not received them by the time that this meeting took place, and we won't be able to include them in this work program if they did expend expert and investigator fees.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments for Marcy on this?
Marcy, it's Joni Eastley in Tonopah. I do have one question, and it's procedural. Is this something we should typically stay out of, or I was embarrassed to see that Nye County was one of those counties where only one public defender provided information. Is it appropriate for us to reach out to the public defenders and find out why they're not submitting? I mean, we were the eye of the storm, so to speak, for the Davis lawsuit.
Thank you, Joni. And I think this is one of, Tom will be talking about this in oversight. And I don't know if, Tom, you want to discuss that question of how you're going to address that in oversight.
I mean, I'm happy to yes, I will cover this more thoroughly in a couple of different places, because there are omissions in the quarterly reporting in a few of the counties. The thing that I would say is that we are in touch with the practitioners and the offices, and that this is a process that we began in June and we're still working on. I do think the appearance of this printed report has lit a fire under most people, and we're getting a lot of feedback. Again, I can talk about that in more detail later, but if there are any other questions, let me know. I would just, to answer your question, Joni, say I think it's absolutely appropriate for you to reach out if you want to, and just.
Oh, you bet I do, and I will. Thank you.
Uh-oh. Oh. Okay, thank you, Joni.
I sounded like a hammer, didn't I?
Yeah, Joni, you got to get off the fence. Tell us how you're feeling.
Tony,
Thanks, Dave. I'm going to take that to heart.
This is Laura Fitzsimmons. I miss you. I miss that
Hey,
spitfire.
Laura. Yeah, as I recall, you were always the one sitting next to me. It's okay. It'll be all right. Settle down.
Okay. So any other comments on the fiscal reports? I can move on. So the next item is just a discussion item. We got the third monitor report. So this is number 5 on our agenda. I don't know, Marcy, if you wanted to say just sort of anything sort of globally about the report.
Yes, and we did provide the report to all of the board members. I do see that Professor Hanan is here today, and she is our court monitor for the Davis case. She did write her third report of the monitor, and in it, it is kind of a status update of where we are. So far, our department has been laying the groundwork to really start carrying out a lot of these Davis requirements. We've discussed some of the concerns that they have in-house, and that's why we presented our oversight plan of how we're going to start preparing with our Davis oversight. And we've also reached out to the National Center for State Courts with some concerns that Professor Hanan had about the weighted caseload study. So we've extended the information that she's written to all the parties that need to hear it. And we're hoping that in the next report, she'll be able to touch upon more of what we've done and the data that we've collected. But at the time her report came out, we had not published our data on time and any sort of caseload reporting. So she wasn't able to include that in her deadline of her report. Seems like we're a little bit off because our reports, all the information has to be into us by the 15 days after the end of the quarter. And her reports are pretty much due at the end of the quarter directly. So our stuff is almost 2 weeks too late to be able to provide to her. But we have provided her copies of our most recent reporting. And I don't know if Professor Hanan would like to add anything.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Marcy. And just thanks to the department for being so available for my questions and providing information. I think, with a quarterly report, I'll capture everything that happens, but I'll be about probably 2.5 months past when you issue your quarterly reports when I then report on them. So that's great. And I had some concerns about the weighted caseload study, but it sounds like the NCSC and the department are working together to try to make sure that the results of that are both representative of the work that gets done in normal times when people are traveling a lot to get to court in person, and also to make sure that the prescriptive weights, how long it should take to work on a case, are included as well. So thank you. I'm available for questions, after the meeting, anytime. Anyone can send me an email. That's totally fine. Thanks.
Does anyone have, thank you both for that overview and for all the work that goes into the report as well. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the monitor report or for Professor Hanan?
And I do have a small question.
Go ahead.
I noticed in the report, there was a suggestion of expanding the time study to attorneys that practice in the urban counties, but are not contract holders in the Davis ones. Are you suggesting by that actually we expand it to some of the folks in both Washoe and Clark and ask some of our contract attorneys to participate? Is that the suggestion?
So thank you for that. I really I didn't mean to put too fine a point on it, but the
Okay.
concern was that there aren't that the pool of attorneys is not large enough and doesn't include attorneys who may have more time at their disposal than others, and so this might have more time to think about motion practice, pretrial, and so forth. So whether it's urban or rural, there just are more lawyers in the urban areas. But to get some numbers and some feedback from other attorneys outside of the pool that has been talked to thus far, just to get more voices in the room.
All right, thank you.
That's useful. Any other questions, comments related to the report or for Professor Hanan? Excellent. So it sounds like there's the time lag, but it seems like there's maybe no reason to fix the time lag. It's just a feature of what's being reported. So, so that's great. And we'll look forward to future reports. And I just want to highlight, of course, there's plenty to do, but also much in the report that reflects like what the department, the amazing work the department has done to get this far, which has really been a heavy lift. And that actually sort of brings into focus some of these other issues, which is actually a good thing. So that's great to hear. Okay, I'm going to move on to the to number 6, the quarterly indigent defense provider reporting. Is that you, Marcy?
That's
Oh,
me.
no, Tom, great, thank you.
Sure. So the quarterly report is out. This represents the first kind of official Davis quarterly caseload reporting. We started this process in June, rolling out Legal Server, doing 2 trainings a week for the entire month. And then Stanley and myself have been doing ongoing support since that time, including going to an advanced Legal Server training in Denver and then applying that knowledge. And I would say that there are some noticeable gaps, and I will address those. But given that we are dealing with, effectively 15 different counties and 80 some providers at least, and dealing with training all of these people and getting people who aren't used to keeping their time to do this, I think the first quarterly report is pretty successful and pretty amazing that we have gotten the buy-in and the numbers that we have. I'll address, there are a few gaps. One of them is in Mineral County, in which there's a number of things going on, quite a few changes in leadership. Unfortunately, the contract public defender, John Oakes, recently passed away, and that has caused additional ripples there. So we don't have numbers with them right now. It's our understanding that Mineral County is contracting with John's son, Justin, who was also on our list, to finish out his contract. And we're going to work with them and with Cassie, who is now on our board, to fix those problems and give them whatever support they need. Churchill County was a little delayed because there was some really extensive and ongoing conversations and research about confidentiality, and we had to make some adjustments to our administration of Legal Server so as to satisfy confidentiality concerns, specifically from coming from Churchill County. We did that. We created a confidentiality agreement, and now they are on board and they're trying to catch up with their data reporting. So they should have all first and second quarter reporting done by the time of our next report. Elko is another place where there's a noticeable omissions, and that is because the current public defender there is kind of saddled with the decision of his predecessor, where they chose a different case management system, Tyler Odyssey, instead of Legal Server. So now they're working on trying to manage 3 different case management systems. And we're talking with Legal Server right now about creating effectively a data bridge that will bring in the required fields from Tyler into Legal Server, because apparently they can't get out of their contract with the other system. I just heard from Matt this morning, and they are 100% on board with catching up with Q1 and moving forward seamlessly from here on out. And again, they're going to put in that information manually, and then we're again working with them and Legal Server to make sure that there's not a problem in the future. Esmeralda, another gap. Jason Ernest has had COVID, and there's been some other issues there. And so there's a gap in reporting there. Again, I've been in touch repeatedly with both Jason and his assistant, and they're working hard to catch up there. I think, and I have great confidence that by the second time we do these quarterly reports, it's going to be a completely different picture with everybody on board. We are reaching out individually to different offices for any kind of, kind of tweaks to how they're entering this information so that we have full confidence in it. So again, know that there's some noticeable gaps in here, but really happy overall with the progress, and think that you're going to see a different picture with the next quarterly report. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Tom?
So maybe I'll wait until after the second report to talk to the public defenders in Nye County.
I think if you wanted to just put a bug in their ear now, that would be okay too. But and I'll get into this in the next section on oversight planning, but we're also planning in-person visits to all of these places to help shore some of this up.
So do you want to go on to the next, if there are no other questions on this particularly, do you want to go to the department oversight plan?
Sure.
Great.
So yeah, that feeds into our oversight plan. Essentially, up until the end of the year, we were working on getting all of the county's indigent defense plans in place so that we would then have a model to work from for oversight. I mean, there are requirements from Davis in oversight, but also we needed to be able to look to each county's plan to make sure they're in compliance with those plans before we could effectively go out and do oversight visits. And so we have a travel plan for oversight for the next 6 months. It'll essentially be 2 counties a month. Marcy and I will be on location in all these places. We are starting with primarily Davis counties, throwing Elko into that mix again to try to help them get caught up with their reporting. But our first visit will be Mineral. We want to offer them as much support and guidance as we can to help them navigate these leadership challenges. And then moving through just those counties that need the support, that have the gaps, boots on the ground there first. This is also part of our overall vision during this first year to continue what I think is the remarkable work of team building that our department is doing across the state. Something that we talk about is that prosecutors have long enjoyed kind of these statewide coalitions and information sharings and trainings and those kinds of things. And that's part of our vision of parity is, building those kinds of strong teams. We're already doing a great job with training. Peter's going to talk about our second annual conference. But, part of this support and team building is coming out, walking, through their day, seeing what they need, creating those, or strengthening those trust relationships so that we can figure out where it is we need to build them up, where it is that we need to focus on funding requests, where it is that we can provide different resources. And we'll talk about our grant requests and those kinds of things for those efforts in a little bit as well. But that's the primary focus of our oversight plan for the next 6 months. Go out, do the in-person meetings, COVID providing, that's been another obstacle to us, to our on-site visitations. But hopefully the next 6 months, we can do all of those things. So that's our plan.
All right, questions for Tom on that? Sounds good. Thank you so much. Okay, so we got a little tip off on the second annual conference, which is the next thing on the agenda. So Peter, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'll just hit a few kind of key points. Right now, the conference is tentatively scheduled for May 26th and 27th, right before Memorial Day weekend. Take place in Las Vegas. Of course, it's all COVID dependent as to whether it will be in person, but we did receive grant funding from the Edward Burr Memorial Justice Assistance Grant for $45,000 to get 45 rural practitioners to come in person to this conference. We're trying to get at least 10 credits for CLE to all the attendees. And we're of course going to make this no registration cost so that we can maximize the attendance and the return on investment, as it were, for our members to attend. Right now, the theme is tentatively shining a light in the darkness. It's using experts and investigators to really make your case. The idea being that we really want to get those experts and investigators and their particular usefulness out into those rural counties and made available to rural practitioners, and to get to build those relationships so that they're aware of who they might be able to get to work with them in their cases. Right now, we're still working on nailing down a venue. We're trying to work with a lot of other partners to develop sponsorships to kind of reduce the cost. Ideally, be able to have some social events, networking events, so that people can really have both a good learning experience and enjoy the time getting to know their peers across the state.
That's great. I think the grant money is just really exciting. I think that the rural attorneys will just be excited that someone is investing a lot of money, giving away money and investing in them sort of at the same time. So that's great. Any questions or comments for Peter on the training or on the conference? Good. All right. Well, I'm sure many of us can try to get there. If it's here in Las Vegas, which would be really wonderful. So number 9 on the agenda, the next thing is big, bold ideas. That's you, Marcy, right? Yeah. Take it away.
I was trying to unmute. So I should be sharing my screen at this point of our PowerPoint slide. We had the honor of presenting some big, bold ideas to Governor Sisolak's team of ideas that we hope to achieve maybe in the next biennium. So at the beginning of it, we did tell them our kind of shortened vision that we have for this department is justice, equity, and support. And we gave a background of where we have been, and this board obviously was along for that ride, so I don't want to touch upon that. But our goal was to provide a blueprint for a stronger Nevada, and we wanted to have it be a 3-part process to create a resilient community, to balance the scales, and a bridge to sustainability. So the first is that creating a resilient community. There are ARPA funds or COVID funds that are available, and we are actually filling out a grant request to be able to create a holistic resource center for public defenders. Now, we want to make this open to all public defenders, but ultimately the goal is to provide our rural public defenders with the same resources that public defenders have in those larger urban offices. So the other goal is to kind of have a mix of criminal justice and social justice. And there's an evidence-based practice of holistic defense where you treat the whole client, not just deal with their criminal matter, but treat them as a whole. We've had the opportunity to reach out to Jessica Flood at Nevada Rural Hospital Partners, and she had the opportunity to tell us about the sequential intercept model. And that's what I have up on your screen right now. There's multiple interception points, but I think what our biggest argument is with public defenders, we can help people at intercept point 2, which is that initial detention and the first court appearance. Generally now there's the ability to help people at intercept point 1, where police officers can help get individuals into behavioral health when they don't arrest them. But if they choose to arrest them, in many of the rural communities, there's no help provided to them until intercept point 3, when they enter into a specialty court or until a jail sentences them. Jessica Flood has also put us in touch with something called a FAST team. This isn't necessarily in the urban counties is what we're understanding, but it is in many of the rural counties. And that stands for the Forensic Assessment Services Triage Team. This triage team is made up of social workers, behavioral health providers, and when they receive a notice from the inmate themselves that they need behavioral health assistance, they go into the jail and they talk to them. FAST has concerns that they're missing out on individuals because if the person gets out of jail before they can go and help them, they have no way to be able to contact them. And also, in some communities, it seems like FAST is talking with the public defender and they have a good relationship. In other communities, there's no relationship with the FAST team, so the public defender doesn't know what's going on. So we're working to try and build that collaboration between public defenders in the rural counties where there's a FAST team and the FAST team. But we believe that with this holistic resource center, we can provide public defenders with resources to do many of these things on their own terms as well. So what we're envisioning is in Carson City, we would have a statewide coordinator that would build connections across the state for gambling evaluators, mental health evaluators, substance abuse evaluators, and social workers. We'd also like to have an in-house mitigation specialist where we could have everyone from the rural counties be able to have access to this mitigation specialist on those larger cases. Or if they need to find information to provide to behavioral health experts because their client is unable to provide them that accurate information. We'd like to also request 2 in-house social workers. These social workers would serve as case managers for public defenders to help get clients into treatment facilities, to help them fill out the forms, to help connect them to the resources that they need that connection to. And we would like to make this available to any public defender that needs the services of this social worker. We also would like to request 2 substance abuse evaluators. And these could be substance abuse evaluators that the public defender's office could contact our department to set up that evaluation in the jail rather than relying on, someone else having to do that. Ultimately, we also are requesting a pool of funds. So if our in-house substance abuse evaluator is unable to do it, or our social workers, that there'd be a pool of funds that public defenders could request, and they could call up and say, I need this sort of expert to our coordinator. And the coordinator could say, here's a list of individuals that could assist you with that. And we could put them in touch so that they could go through that individual to assist them on going through. We believe that this could reduce the jail burden. It would facilitate remote evaluations because we're also asking for about 30 computers that we can provide in jails so that these evaluations could be done virtually. And in reaching out to the rural county sheriff's offices, they're open to this idea of having these computers put in because they have no resources in these rural communities for their inmates. And we hope to be able to provide those if we get funding through the ARPA funding. We're also considering, and this wouldn't be the main part of it, but we've also reached out to the Department of Health and Human Services in Lakes Crossing. We know that there's a delay at this point in setting up competency evaluations. And I've been in touch with Kate Thomas about Washoe County's contract with Lakes Crossing, where they had a contract with Lakes to do these evaluations. And that contract has been terminated because the Department of Health and Human Services was unable to find full-time psychiatrists and psychologists. So we hope that when we build up this network of experts, we can also gain individuals on that list that could perform competency evaluations. And hopefully we could provide that assistance to our public defenders as well. So overall, this would be to assist our public defenders with treating the client as a whole and providing them with the resources that they've never had before. So I don't know if anyone has questions on this slide, which we can answer at the end, but the second part is going to be covered by Peter.
Can I ask a question just about the process for these big, bold ideas that the governor was sort of soliciting? Is what was being solicited? Is it a way to get sort of be in the next budget or to get money now, or just what does that kind of look like? Oh, and I noticed, wait, before you say that, I noticed that Christy has her hand up, but I wanted to acknowledge that Christy is here and Bevan Lister also joined us. So.
I think to answer that question, it was to build the upcoming budget. But I think it's also to provide guidance to us on these big, bold ideas as to how we could make these things happen now. The governor's office staff has reached out to us and encouraged us they knew about this holistic resource before we actually had the ability to pitch it to them. And they've actually told us about this notice of funding opportunity that we are pursuing. So I think that is kind of a goal, is to assist us in getting these big, bold ideas a reality.
Can I also ask a question about the evaluation process? So would the evaluators be getting their regular rate, or are we going to contract with them for something less? What's going to happen there?
So what we were thinking about, Allison, is copying this off of what's being done by the Department of Education. So the Department of Education received funding to provide counseling services to children that were feeling anxiety because of COVID or feeling other mental health issues because of COVID. And what they've done is they've set up direct client services contracts with each of these providers at the rate that they're able to pay. So all of these direct service providers have already been approved by the Board of Examiners. And what we would have to do is we would have to enter our specific contract with them, but it would be similar to the contracts that they've already entered into with other departments. So we're basically paying the same rates that they're charging other state agencies. It would just be the same rate that they've already been approved for.
This is Chris, if that's appropriate. Just a weird thought, but with the AG now flopping on the issue of the settlement for the opioid, and since some of this is really looking at substance abuse, is there any potential for partnering or garnering some dollars from them based on the settlement?
So I'm glad that you asked that as well, because that's something that we've been keeping in touch with. So there's a committee called ACORN, is the short acronym. And we've been attending every meeting they've had so far, and they've only had 2, but they are determining the priorities that they have in where this funding should go for the state. So we've made public comment. We've told them about the Holistic Resource Center. And actually yesterday we had the opportunity to talk with Elise Monroy, who is on that board. And it wasn't about where the funds are going to go, but what we were talking to her about was a program called Open Beds. So Open Beds is apparently a computer program where you can put in information about your client's addiction, a logistical area of, where they need treatment and what type of treatment they need. And it actually tells you real time what beds are available. At this point, they're only providing that system to hospitals and to service providers. And we are actually trying to reach out to see if they will provide that to public defenders. They were trying to provide it to specialty courts. It has not been provided to specialty courts yet. But we've explained to him that specialty courts are kind of just the tip of the iceberg. And there's a lot of other clients that would benefit from this program. So we're meeting with them to try and get public defenders into that Open Beds website. And so we're taking positive action by reaching out to ACORN for that. And then that led us to the Open Beds discussion as well.
Thank you. That's interesting. On the Open Beds, I would caution them or whoever checks on it to make sure they don't have a hidden admission fee. I'm finding out that a lot of rehab facilities, in addition to what they quote you, tap on sometimes what the monthly rate might be. So there's a ripoff in that whole industry, but that's just a whole nother sidebar. Okay, so it's just at this point, so we're on their radar. But this committee then goes, who do they recommend the funding to? The governor's office or to IFC or both? Or how does that work? Do we know yet?
I don't know specifically. I would presume it's to the governor's office, but they make the priorities of where the funding should go. And we are trying to harp on the fact that public defenders, in our mind, are probably in the best situation to be able to help individuals that are addicted to opioids, because we can connect with them on intercept point 2. Public defenders are generally the ones that refer people to treatment. Law enforcement isn't on the same side as the client, and they don't have the same end game as public defenders do in trying to assist their client going where they're at. So we're trying to bring public defenders to the table and have them realize the benefit that we can have if they will allow us to come and have these discussions.
Okay, thank you. I hope the governor's office, I think that they would see the wisdom of that. It's just common sense. Thank you.
Sorry. Any other questions, comments before we just move on in the presentation? I think we're good to go.
And if I could just make one quick comment, I see that Janelle and Darren are on the call. We do have a meeting with Open Beds on Friday for a demo, and if you'd like an invitation, I can send it your way.
This is Darren. That'd be great. Thanks.
All right, are we passing the baton to Peter on the report? Okay, go ahead, Peter. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of the other kind of initiatives we're taking. As you all are aware, we have a lot of other things we have to take care of and apart, and these are different initiatives to help kind of support indigent defenders and try and improve efficiencies at a statewide level. So the first item here is the complex litigation unit. As you're aware, Regulation 19 permits rural counties to transfer responsibility for death penalty cases and direct appeals from their cases to the state public defender's office. And we're looking to build a unit that's going to be a couple of attorneys, probably one that's death penalty certified, another that might be appellate in nature. So we can kind of remove the workload from those rural attorneys that are already having to do this as part of their contracts. Of course, there also is, I think there's two schools of thought when it comes to appeals. One school of thought is that people prefer that the trial attorney handle the direct appeal because they have the most intimate knowledge of the case. The other school of thought is that it should be viewed with fresh eyes. It's contained in the record anyways, and that somebody else should take that appeal. So this would give the counties the option to reduce some of the burden on the attorneys in their counties and to transfer those types of cases to the public defender's office. Ideally, we'd be able to rotate second chairs through for death penalty cases so we can develop a longer list of SCR 250 qualified counsel in the state. As you're aware, there's a virtual dearth of them in the rural counties, being maybe a couple that are qualified. So we'd like to improve those numbers, especially as cases come along and there aren't that many opportunities for them to really get that kind of experience. The second one is, I don't think we can understate the necessity for getting the data we're collecting analyzed. So that second part is to increase compensation, attract quality practitioners. We looked at that same, NRS 7 statute that says if you're appointed to get $100 an hour, we all know intuitively that that's not enough. We have anecdotal evidence it's not enough. So really it's developing the information we're collecting to really make that showing that number needs to come up to provide for quality indigent defense services, especially in the rural counties. The third point here is adjusted staffing. Again, can't understate the necessity of a weighted caseload study to really understand how much time and effort are going into these cases, what a reasonable wage should be for attorneys in the rural counties and throughout the state, what kind of time should be spent on certain types of cases where too little time is getting spent by necessity or by inconvenience, and really adjusting what the counties need to provide in terms of practitioners and how the state can help fund those positions as needed. Again, as AB 424 goes into effect, staffing is probably going to be a very different animal. And it's probably insufficient to say, well, you're here on a salary basis or you're here on a contract basis, so we expect you now to turn up every Saturday for several hours a day. There are going to be staffing issues with that. We want to be able to have some information regarding how we can be assistance if those types of changes start happening come July. The last is corrective action plan financial staffing support. As you know, there are a couple of counties that are down a couple of attorneys. Either they haven't filled contract positions or they're missing some salary positions in-house. And we're looking at increasing the flexibility for the public defender's office to be able to contract to fill in those spots for the short term. Right now, NRS 180.450 requires basically a 2.5-year cycle to actually get the state public defender to transfer all cases in a certain county to take over that indigent defense services. And we're trying to look into creating, maybe only 1 or 2 attorneys really need to be loaned out at a time to a county. And if there's somebody who quits a contract mid-contract and a county needs to come up to their staffing needs, the SPD might be able to support that if we have the requisite changes in either statute and regulations and the number of attorneys to really support that mission. I think Tom's taking this next page. If there are any questions on the prior, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, questions, anyone?
And this is Jeff. I'm not sure it's completely a question on that prior slide as much as a comment. Clark County obviously has been paying our public defenders on the same scale as our district attorneys for several years now, and as long as I can remember, in fact. And I don't think there's any question that we have equal quality in the criminal justice system with our public defenders. So I support that. The legislature, when it passed AB 424, which essentially put the 48-hour rule on the Valdez decision, there was fiscal notes by almost every county in NACO, and then they made a few changes and eliminated the fiscal notes. But they left in the 48 hours as opposed to the 72-hour concept. So there's no question that he's correct that there's going to be additional staffing. And just to put it in perspective, I'm going to start doing the staffing request on this next week. I'm not waiting till the July 1 date. I'm putting in for 29 additional positions next week, 7 of which are going straight to the public defender's office, all simply driven by AB 424.
Interesting. Thank you, Jeff. Any other comments on this slide, or we can move on? All right, thank you.
I'm going to take this one, Chair.
Go ahead, please.
So, there's some overlap in these things that we're talking about. Obviously, one of our big missions is to create sustainability across the board in indigent defense. There's a lot of areas in which we still need to adjust this. One of them, under our effort to build these partnerships with all of these counties, is that there's an underlying belief that, this is the quote unfunded mandate. And right now, since the money for this maximum contribution formula is not in our accounts, but we have to go to IFC for it, there's some suspicion or belief or whatever that the state's not going to fund all of these changes, that we're not going to be able to get this money to kind of affect this change despite the maximum contribution formula. So one of our big pushes is in the next biennium to be able to bring that money, essentially in-house, so that there's a little more confidence and trust in these relationships we're building with these counties. Again, key to this is supporting our providers, creating this solid statewide team. And just like, county management, the individual practitioners have some resistance to all of these changes for any number of reasons. One of those is they're not being compensated for any of this extra data collection, which does, put a strain on them, requires additional resources, either human resources or their own time. So one of the things we're trying to do, we keep trying to, in addition to training and motions and books, is that we've submitted grants for 2 key ideas. One of these is to get Westlaw provided to every single practitioner on our list across the state. We've submitted a grant for this, and we will tie that to data collection. So if they're taking X number of cases, or if they're using legal server, then we will provide them Westlaw free of charge. We have worked with Westlaw to get a negotiated bulk rate, but essentially what we're providing, or what we would be providing them, will be, if we get this grant, is about a $500 a month Westlaw account. Another thing is this idea of tablets for discovery, and that's what we would provide all of these offices. Get this grant, They use tablets that they can upload discovery to. They don't have any internet connection. And so they're password protected. So they would be safe for us to take to the jails, give to the personnel there, and then they can provide it to the clients, sort of as the jail schedule allows. So this is helpful from both a COVID standpoint, because the practitioners aren't having to spend hours in the jail going over body cams or any other footage that may take a long time. But also just from an efficiency standpoint, public defenders can drop these off, clients can watch it, and then they can have a conversation about it. So it's kind of a win-win, and it kind of helps jail personnel as well, makes them more amenable to this because they can give it to them on their schedule. So that's kind of a win-win for everyone. We're working with a few different people right now on this idea of student loan assistance. We've been working on different sources for funding working on the possibility of putting it into the statutes through a BDR. I'm going to forget her name, Marcy, but if you can help me out with a woman at UNR that we're working with, Christine
Smith.
At UNLV.
Yeah, UNLV, yeah. Who did this years ago, but I think the political situation maybe wasn't right for it. And then, we're continuing to work on this idea of pay parity with the salary survey, the weighted caseload study, and we intend to put forth again another BDR to raise the hourly rate for appointed counsel, but also to mirror what the feds have done, which is tie it to a cost of living index so that it automatically raises every year with that. We don't have to come back, and there won't be these big gaps. There hasn't been a hourly rate increase since 2003. And I can tell you, as someone who was in private practice for a long time, that you cannot run an office and pay your overhead at $100 an hour. So this is something that's really needed in order to reach these sustainability goals. Community building, our travel budget is extremely limited. And so we want to increase that for the next biennium so that we're able to go out and, be on location with our team, have that face-to-face interaction, continue to nurture these relationships. We want to increase our training budget for all the reasons we've talked about. We're already working, creating this pipeline through UNLV, and we want to continue with this idea of an indigent defense incubator. There is kind of, to our surprise, a great shortage of indigent defense providers across the state. It's a bigger issue than I think we anticipated. So this is another piece of the puzzle that's really important, is bringing new faces and new energy and new talent into this realm to kind of carry this into the future. A lot of the practitioners, especially in the rurals, are aging out, are retiring, and there hasn't been a system in place to kind of train them and replace them. And then continued development, we are going to continue to work on grant funding and any kind of alternative funding that we can. Marcy went into in depth our ideas for this holistic resource center, but again, that's just one of the pieces that we're working on continuing to develop our program.
Sorry. That was very useful. So and informative. Does anyone have comments or questions for Tom? Okay. I hope I'm not missing anything in the chat. Okay, so should we, I think next is update from the department, right? So is that starting with Peter or?
Sure, yeah, I'll go ahead and start.
Perfect, thanks.
We did post an internship for the internship program to try and get some summer associates from Boyd out into the rural counties. We do have that stipend funding based on the grant funding we received, which is fantastic. It gets them up to $6,500 to cover the summer to try and get room and board and cover their cost of living expenses. According to the Supreme Court rules, I have an opportunity to actually argue motions in court, handle trials, work with negotiations. There are some restrictions. They had to be at least a 2L student. They have to meet some other requirements for the Supreme Court, and they have to be working in an organized public defender's office or for a pro bono attorney. Based on a limitation, we did limit it to only counties with public defender's offices that are organized because it created some confusion as to whether they could work for a contract attorney, but only on pro bono cases, or whether indigent cases would kind of fall under that umbrella of working for a government agency. In order to avoid that confusion, we limited it. Some of the counties that did have public defender's offices either weren't interested or weren't able to facilitate an intern. So in the end, I think we had 3 counties total that are available. They can work for the NSPD, the Elko Public Defender's Office, or the Churchill County Public Defender's Office. And hopefully you'll get some applicants and be able to fund new people working into the rural counties.
That's really exciting.
And then I think the other 2 updates are, we do have those pending grant requests, which Tom talked about, the tablets and Westlaw. And then we also are submitting the Holistic Resource Center request. It is due at the end of the month. So we are keeping our fingers crossed that we're going to be getting funding for any of those or all of those items. We have submitted our data analyst request. We've made it through the Board of Examiners, and now we're on to the Interim Finance Committee on February 9th at 9 a.m. We received permission from our analyst to be able to put out our request for data analysts. So the RFP is actually attached to the material that we've submitted. And really what our goal is that we're hoping to be able to fill this earlier than we filled our data analyst last time. Because what happened last time is we had the funds approved at the April Interim Finance Committee meeting, and then it took until September to actually enter into a contract with that person. So we're hoping that if we can really release this RFP early and push some of the deadlines, we're hoping that we can go to an April Interim Finance Committee for approval of our contract. So that's really what our goal is to try and get this done. And then our final update, we should note that Jason Colnut, our management analyst from our department, is also leaving at the end of this month. So we are really going to miss having him with our department. For the past 2 years, he's really helped us for the financial aspect of it, of building our budgets, doing a lot of the things that we've put in place. So we're really grateful for the time that we've had with Jason. And if you know any management analysts that want to apply for our job, send them our way. So those are our updates from the department.
Thank you. And thank you to Jason for all that you've done for the department. I just have heard over and over again, just that you're sort of very like, you do much more than might be normally expected in this job. And so it's been like hugely important to get the department off the ground. So thank you so much. Okay, any questions on those updates? All right, so next is me, update from the chair. As you all know, I'm sort of in this transitional phase, and I'm thinking that it would be wise for me to step down as the chair, and then eventually step down on the board, but I might probably not do that until my transition is complete. But in the meantime, I feel like we've done a lot of work, and I would love to be helpful in sort of talking to a new chair and supporting their work while I'm still on the board. So so I'm going, I'm announcing that now, and then you'll see the next thing on the agenda is that we're going to plan meetings. I anticipate that we're going to have, sort of transition to quarterly meetings. And which I think will be easier on everyone. So if you're interested in being the chair, of course, I'm happy to, you can reach out to Marcy. You can talk to me. I'm happy to be helpful in that process. And then my own timing is actually just very unclear. I'm just sort of at the mercy, whim, whatever, of the Senate calendar. So, I can't really predict like what that will look like, but I think I will step down from chair so that I can kind of step back. And then eventually when I completely step down off the board, I would be replaced by the Nevada Supreme Court. So. All right, so looking at future meetings, we are happily transitioning to quarterly. I think we were going to propose the next meeting be on April 27th at 1 p.m. And then the following meetings, and then there's, Marcy, do you want to talk about the special meeting in Tonopah?
Yes, so we are requesting that we switch to quarterly meetings because as we talked with Professor Hanan, we are required to update these reports quarterly. And what happens is, by the first quarter, the reporting is due 15 days after the first quarter. And then we have to prepare all the information for presentation. So each of these meetings, the setting date would give us about 2 weeks to prepare all the information for the board. And that's why we've set the timing as we've set it. So the next board meeting that we would request would be April 27th. We are asking for a June meeting because, as many of you recall, our annual report is due by July 1st, and we need this board's approval before we can send it off to the governor's office, the legislature, and the Supreme Court. So that's why we've thrown out the idea of maybe seeing if we can actually get that in-person meeting happening this upcoming summer. Last time we were planning it for Tonopah. So I don't know if the board would like to have an in-person meeting in Tonopah and try that again. And I've reached out to Joni and she's willing to assist us with putting it together like she did previously. Or if we'd like to have that meeting be virtual, that was just an idea. So that would be a June 15th meeting that we'd request. And then following those would have a meeting July 27th, October 26th, and January 25th. So that's the request of the department, but we can do whatever the board feels is best.
Marcy, this is Jeff. I think I was one of the original board members that thought it might be nice if we actually all got together. And Joni volunteered Tonopah, so we all said fine. My only request at this point is I know we normally have Wednesday meetings. Is there any way that the live meeting in Tonopah could be shifted to, say, Thursday? And I only say that because those of us down here might end up actually just driving up there, because by the time you try to fly in and meeting starting at 1 o'clock, and I'm a sleepy person, so I hate to get up, at 2 a.m. so I could get there for a 1 p.m. meeting and be asleep. I'm just wondering if we could shift that particular meeting, if it would meet everybody's schedule to shift that meeting to a Thursday instead of right smack dab in the middle of the week.
And that would be fine with the department. I believe we chose Wednesday meetings because it was best for Chair Trom's schedule. So I don't know if that's something that'll change when the new chair takes place or if we want to continue with Wednesdays, but we're fine with the January 16th meeting, which I believe is a Thursday.
You mean June 16th?
June 16th.
June 16th, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. How do other feelings from other people about that meeting?
Dave Mendiola, I think that works for me. I just got to look at, there's a couple of budget items, but looks like that's okay.
Okay. And the only other thing I was going to say is just if there's another possibility would be like a meeting on the tail end of the training in Las Vegas, since other people will be here, but that seems like it's too early and would be maybe too difficult for the department when you're doing a big training. So I'm not going to suggest that. And if June 16th is good with people, that's fine with me. Joni, how is Tonopah in June?
This is
It's
Laura.
better in June than it is in May. It's still dicey in May concerning snow. So yeah, June should be good. And I have to just laugh at what Jeff said. He said it makes more sense to do it on Thursday. He didn't want to get up and fly somewhere. There's nowhere to fly. You could fly to Reno, Jeff, but the distance from Reno to Tonopah is the same as the distance from Tonopah to Vegas.
I know, that's why we were planning to drive. I just didn't want to get up early and drive all in one day. I wanted to come up the day before. So I could actually experience Tonopah.
Yeah, well, we like to say we're in the middle of everything and 5 miles from nowhere.
Laura, did you have a,
Yeah, it's not significant. I'll be in Ireland the month of June. It'll be the first meeting I've ever missed. And I'm sorry, because I would love to join you guys.
Oh, Laura. What a good reason to miss, though.
Well, Marcy's got a lot of money in her budget. Let's all go to Ireland and have the meeting there.
Can we do it with $10,000? Because that's what we got for travel.
This is Chris. I would have to meet because I'm hoping to be in Spain and Italy. So it just depends on my rescheduled COVID trip.
okay. So I'm hearing the June 16th is good, but we've got some significant sort of can't make it. So I guess that just makes me a little bit, I think let's reserve that date, but it seems like we'll see how, I'm not sure we're all going to show up in Tonopah, given what I'm hearing. So I don't know. How do other people feel? Let's reserve the date. So it's at least
right
reserved. And then we can, as we get closer, we can sort of see how it's all going with the everything, whether it's going to happen. Okay, that's good. And then just note, I think the department can send it. Otherwise, we've got these meetings that are on, these are all Wednesdays, right? They don't need to be on Wednesdays. That was for me during the school year. But if we have those, I think the more important thing was, unless people have a real issue with Wednesday afternoons, to just get them on the calendar so people at least have them in their calendars.
And Chair, I think that was an issue with Cassie Hall from Mineral County because their meetings are on Wednesdays. And that's why she's not here today. I think that's generally the issue she has is Wednesday.
So I guess that's a fair question, is whether we should be picking another 1 p.m. meeting at a different day of the week, sort of going forward. So why don't we ask the board members who are here, is Thursday okay too, for 1 p.m. on Thursdays?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so
Thursdays
maybe,
are fine for me.
okay, so if that's a good day, why don't we sort of anticipate switching to Thursday? The office can confirm with Cassie that that's going to work fine for her. And then we can switch these to probably, so we might want to do that for April 27th as well. And meet
Yeah,
on
so-
the 28th.
Yes, so we will fix that and we will send out calendar notices to everyone with the Zoom information as well.
For the Thursdays, which is probably going to be like April 27th, April 28th, July 28th, October 27th, January 26th, or something like that. Okay, that sounds great. Okay, unless we have any other issues, I don't think we do. I'm going to open it for public comment. Anyone who's joining us has a comment?
Yes, this is Dr. Cord. I'd like to make a comment.
Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Dr. Cord. I'm a forensic psychologist who primarily works up in Northern Nevada. So over the last few months, dealing with the DIDS pre-authorization request and some of the calls that I've been getting from attorneys, I really see that there are two issues that are coming up fairly consistently. One, that attorneys don't necessarily know beyond kind of the standard types of things, the types of things that experts could potentially, the services experts could potentially provide. And a lot of times it's been very helpful in just having that consultation with them in that discussion about framing the question as it relates to their particular case. And I think that that's just because many of them had practiced out in the rural areas. They don't see a lot of issues that come up, but usually I'd say 50% of the time an attorney does consult with me, usually we can identify something that they end up putting in a DIDS request for services. So I think that link, and I'm glad to hear about the training that's coming up, but it may be helpful to really even generate as part of the website or something like standard questions to ask an expert or legal questions that could be addressed that may be helpful to their case or those types of things. Because I think a lot of the attorneys that I practice with, a lot of times they don't know the right questions to ask. And I think that would probably be very helpful from that standpoint. I also think that in talking to two attorneys recently, one of the things that they brought up that they were really uncertain about, like, so if they call me for the purposes of just consultation, how could I get reimbursed for my time to do that? And, so usually we just kind of put it into a DIDS request that they're doing. But I think that also precludes them from that opportunity for consultation to look at that. Because there are times when people call me and I kind of tell them, you should call a priest. I probably can't help you in those circumstances. But then I don't get any, so there's no that opportunity for us to be reimbursed for that. And I think from an expert standpoint, that might be helpful, that the attorneys that are practicing in the rural areas that are falling under this office, it might be helpful that they know that they could reach out for consultation, and that consultation would be paid at a certain fee, or so I mean, typically it's a half hour, 45 minutes, usually max of my time when we do that. But I think that might be something worth considering as we're trying to develop these attorneys. And I see it that way. I see it from a financial standpoint. It's helpful for me to develop that attorney to understand those questions, because then they'll reach out to me again. But at the same time, I think it's also helpful for the defendants, because we're able to ask lots of other questions that may be meaningful to the court. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for that comment. And can you remind me again, where are you?
I practice across the whole northern part. I've do cases basically. I've done cases Lyon, Lander, Humboldt, Eureka, Elko, White Pines, and then I do a lot of cases out of Carson.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
And Chair Trump, I don't know if I could just remind the board that in those plans for the provision of indigent defense services, many counties have put in place what this board recommended, that you do not have to request pre-authorization up to a certain amount. So if Dr. Court is charging a consultation and it's less than that amount, a public defender could reach out to him, and then that bill could be submitted to our department for just immediate processing to the county. So that is built in. And we're also reaching out to Dr. Cord to see if maybe he'd be willing to provide a training for our rural public defenders on what questions they should ask experts.
That's great. Yeah, I think it would be so useful to hear from you, but also to hear from the other attorneys, from the attorneys who've used you, just to sort of see how it shifts their perspective in perhaps every case or many cases, just having built it their own experience and working with an expert and knowing how to use them. Okay, that's great. Any other public, and thank you for patiently sitting through our meeting to make the public comment. Any other public comments?
No, Chair Trom.
I'm sorry.
No, Chair Trom.
No, okay. Okay, so I think we can adjourn. I know we don't need a motion, but we always have a motion to adjourn. Would anyone like to move?
Sure, I always make that motion for you, but the minutes are always correct and leave it out. So
It would be my pleasure to second his motion.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you all so much for a great meeting, and thank you for the department for doing such great work. We're really proud of that.
And good luck. We're all behind you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, good luck, Dan.
Thank you.